It's very hard to detect. You actually have to use specific tools. There's not many telltale signs that you're being man in the middle. So that kind of makes it especially spooky. And this is just, again, reinforcing the same point. ARP poisoning, which is where the attacker sends a spoofed ARP packet to the routing device, or in this case, well, in this case, he's just talking to the other two things. But he essentially tells him over here that he's guy over here, and guy over here that he's the guy over there. So that whenever they try to communicate with each other, he's going to become the man in the middle, and he's going to forward messages, and he can see everything in the middle. He can change it, steal stuff, whatever he feels like doing. And then you have social engineering. And when I was doing some reading for this, it blew my mind, the things that I read, because I had no idea that it was actually this bad. Social engineering is actually like the weakest point in any network, because they say that the weakest point in any network are the people that use it. Especially when you're dealing with people who are not tech savvy and they don't know the things that can happen if you keep your passwords under your keyboard or on the desk or something like that, which is not a good thing to do. Essentially, it's walking up to someone and you're targeting them. Like, they may work for a business that you want to compromise the systems of, and you walk up and you become their friend, and you get into conversations about where they went to high school, what was their, what year did they graduate. And you can infer a lot of this information, to, well, if I know what high school you went to, I can look up the mascot, and that's a very common security question on accounts is, what was your high school mascot? So, if you went to whatever school, if you went to Windsor Academy, you'd say the Knight. So, one thing that a lot of people don't realize, and that I've talked to a lot of people about, and is the second point on this, randomly accepting friends on Facebook is bad. You don't want to do that. A lot of people think, hey, I have a lot of friends. But you put a lot of personal information on Facebook, and a lot of people don't make the correlation to the fact that you put the high school you graduated from, the year you graduated from, your birthday on there, a phone number probably, email address. And I can probably take all that stuff, do password recovery on your account, and if it's what was your high school mascot, well, you put all that information on Facebook, and you're my friend, so I can give you your email account. So essentially, if you have a set, security questions, or a lot of websites will allow you to craft your own security questions. Any information that you have as part of a security question, do not put it on the internet, because someone will find it and they will get your stuff. And that's what led me into finding this out. There was a survey done by the company that sponsors the information security conferences in London, and it said that they went into the London Waterloo station and they walked up to people with free pins, and they said, if you tell us the password to your computer, and they were like, oh, this is part of the study, and we're affiliated with such and such university and stuff. All that stuff was a lie. Like, they were literally doing a survey, but they just blatantly lied about who they were representing and stuff like that. And they walked up to people with free pins, and they were like, hey, tell me your password to this computer, and I will give you this pin. And the pin's super cheap, and it even said they didn't hear the pins were very cheap. And 90% of office workers in that station gave up their computer password. And even if some lied, some told the truth. And those are the people you got to watch out for. That's the weakest link in the network. And also, interestingly, men were much more likely to give up the password than women by about 10%. 95% of men gave up the password, whereas 85% of women gave up the password. I thought that was interesting.
Can we do that on our campus?
According to this, you can do it just about anywhere. Another one that was really interesting is they stood outside of a supermarket and they were asking people information like what was their mother's maiden name, passwords to computers, and 34% of the people, without any kind of offering of anything, just told them. They were like, hey, yeah, it's this. Hey, how you doing? And then when they started offering pieces of chocolate to people, and that number rose to 79%. So they're like, hey, your mother's maiden name and your date of birth, and I'll give you a bar of chocolate. And you're like, hey, how can you pass that up? So it goes to show you that people don't put the emphasis on securing personal information that they probably should. This was all in London. I don't know if it'll be exactly the same here, but I've done work for a lot of people, and it would. just based on the people that I had experience with. I mean, people, their passwords to every account they write are sticky noted on the desk that like goes around the monitor, and I'm just like, I pull out a paper, I'm like, not really, but you could easily, and it just, don't put things out there that don't need to be out there, and don't put things out there that could jeopardize your identity, is the main point to that. So, that was a prime example of social networking. You just go out there and you offer people chocolate and they'll give you all the stuff. So, when you're going to protect yourself on the internet, something you really, really need is an antivirus. And in the antivirus that you're looking to get, whether it be free or paid for, it needs to have specific features. And there's a bunch. These are the most important, and there's still a long list for it to be the really important ones. Those are really important. Especially the compressed file scanner. Because a lot of people download stuff offline, and hackers know that a lot of antiviruses cannot scan compressed files because it's encrypted. Not really, but kind of sort of. So if you have an antivirus that can, it is aware of all the compression stuff you have on your computer, and it can read the file and actually know what's in it, that's a whole lot better than waiting until you unzip it and hoping it catches it, which I know some people who do that. And that's just not a good idea. A real-time scanner that scans things as they happen. When you go to a website, scan it in the background. When you open a file, when you run an executable, it's scanning in the background. That's a good thing to have. Another thing is an on-access scanner. And it starts to sound like overkill, because you got your real-time scanner that scans things as you do them. And the on-access scanner scans a file when it becomes activated. Like if you double-click an executable, it's going to scan it because it has become accessed. It's an on-access scanner. The heuristic scanner is the coolest scanner to me, just because it learns, based on the behavior of other programs, what to look for. It's kind of like profiling, but it's cool. So heuristic scanners are cool. If you set their sensitivity too high, they will almost flag everything as a virus in my experience, and that is not helpful. Especially when you hit the button that says delete all things that pop up, and then you just see it's getting rid of everything in your computer, and you're like, oh no. So I've done that. Another good thing is a script scanner. A lot of things are moving to the internet as far as attacks, and the scary thing about online attacks is they're platform independent. If you have a Mac, you have a Linux computer, you have a Windows computer, it doesn't matter. Online attacks will get you, for the most part. Something that can interpret the scripts that the computer is running, both client-side and the effects of server-side, because obviously you can't see the server-side scripts because they're all secret stuff. Client-side scripts and the results of browsing activity being scanned is something really nifty to have in case you go to a website that you shouldn't, or one of those phishing sites, if it has any abnormal scripting activity. A phishing scanner is another good thing to have. An email scanner, obviously, because a lot of people catch viruses from opening emails from people they don't know and opening attachments like, hey, here's a fun game, and then you have a virus. So if you get an email and you don't know who it's from, or it sounds suspicious at all and you know the person, call the person and say, like, hey, did you send me this, or did some botnet get your computer and then send you this? So if you don't know explicitly what the contents of the attached file are, or who sent you the message, don't open them. And that could save people nationwide millions of dollars a year. I mean, just ridiculous amounts of money. Then they got to call people like me. I got to go over there. I got to fix their stuff. And I like that, but to a certain extent, it's kind of ridiculous. And of course, have it automatically update. Don't have one that sits there and waits for you to update it, because from my experience, most people don't update their stuff. And not updating software on your computer is one of the easiest ways to get viruses. And then have a firewall. Any firewall. And I've spelled that to people because I do a lot of work for people, and I'll go to their house and, they have dozens of viruses on their computer, and it's just in awful condition. It's probably going to be reformatted, and I hope I can get the stuff off. And I ask them, I'm like, hey, why's your firewall off? And I'm like, because some viruses will turn off the firewall. And if they really, really did something dumb, they can get a virus like that on there with the firewall active, and they'll turn it off. So I asked them, did you turn off the firewall? And they're like, yeah, I thought it was slowing down my internet connection. I'm like, yeah. probably isn't, and that was a bad idea. So, another thing to keep in mind is having